Well, good afternoon and welcome to 12 Report. My name is Mazino Appeal. I'm sitting in for Blessings Musugu. Now, let's give you guys the headlines this morning. Coming up, heavy rains flood parts of Lagos, paralyzing traffic and exposing failed drainage system. And Senior Staff Association of Nigeria Universities and non-academic staff unions of universities extend 2-week ultimatum as strike looms over unmet demands. Also coming up, former President Mutharika to claim State House as President Chekwara concedes. As usual, we have our reporters stationed in different parts of the country and outside. Victor Madike from the streets of Lagos, Idong Joseph in Abuja, Emmanuel Bagudu joins from Kano, Afia Hagen, she joins us from London in the UK. So we've got the details in a moment. Well, tragedy struck in Lagos as a 40-foot container-laden truck overturned and crushed a police officer and a female passenger to death. The truck reportedly lost control while making a dangerous turn and landed on a tricycle carrying 4 passengers at Ijora Crossway. Now, 2 others, including the tricycle operator, sustained serious injuries and were rushed to Jim San Hospital. Director of Public Affairs and Enlightenment of the Lagos State Traffic Management Authority, LASMA, Adebayo Taufik, in a statement said the bodies of the deceased have been taken to the mortuary as investigations into the accident continues. Now, heavy rains brought parts of Lagos to a standstill on Tuesday, with flooding paralyzing traffic on major roads. Many commuters were trapped for hours, and the downpour once again exposed the city's poor drainage and flood control system. News Central's Victor Madike is on the streets of Lagos and joins us for more on this. We also have Kathleen Nomo, a consultant who will be sharing her experience with us. First off, let's talk to Victor. Victor, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us here. 12 Report. Victor, give us a sense of what the aftermath looks like today. Are the roads clear? How are residents coping after yesterday's disruption?
Masino, I do know that you might be having PTSD, ranging from what happened yesterday. A lot of Lagosians didn't see that coming, actually, having spent several hours in traffic because of the downpour yesterday. But as it is today, it's quite clear. Traffic is flowing on my right down to, for those going to Agege or the axis, you can see the traffic is really clear. And behind me, for those coming from Ojota, the Secretariat of Bega, is still clear. And behind me, same thing. So, but there's something you need to understand about Agege, the bus stop where I'm currently. It's a major spot in Lagos where every time the rain starts, this place is usually very, it's difficult to get out of these axes because movement stops when rain starts in Lagos. So when traffic is flowing freely like it does mean that for most part of mainland, you are likely to see that kind of scene, basically. So the question I did ask some of our commuters who I spoke to earlier, they did say that they wish that these things really stop eventually because they never saw that coming. Some of them were tired, coming from work and going to their houses and then having to spend as much as 4, 5, 6, 7, even hours going to just a shorter distance, just somewhere, for instance, maybe like mile 12 or K2. That shouldn't take them approximately an hour. Probably took them about 3 or 4 hours, and that's quite terrible. It's draining. So the situation really at the moment in Agege bus stop here in Ikeja, it's pretty much flowing, just like most part of mainland could rightly tell. But I also think that this is not very unique to Lagos. Every time the rain starts like this in September, for most times you get to see a lot of potholes, drenched with water. And so when that happens, vehicles have to, reduce their speed, and when vehicles reduce their speed, you're likely to get traffic behind. Sometimes residents also are one of the reasons why we have some of this traffic when they throw dirt into our drainages, and when that happens, you block the drainage, you block water from flowing, and these are part of the problem. I also think that there's some kind of so much attention being paid to our coastal highway these days, and maybe the state government is, or the federal government basically, are not really paying attention to some of these loopholes, because that in itself is something that is causing a lot of issues for our commuters who are, going to their homes from offices or vice versa. So I also think that from what residents told me, because they couldn't stay with me to talk to me because the rains were falling as at the time I was trying to speak with them. They said that the government should begin to pay attention to some of these things because they can't continue like this. As much as you want to pay so much attention to the coastal highway, you should also pay attention to some of these bad roads that have been causing a lot of stoppages on our roads, because when there are bad roads, vehicles can't move freely. When there are bad roads, waters are clogged in these places. But at the moment, I can tell you, I know you're going to think about how do I get home today, but the truth is most of the waters on our ways are all good. They've all got into the drainages. So whatever water you see right now, just pockets of them, located in some corners of the roads. But I think it's something that can be managed. You'll notice that we have our last mile officers right here trying to ensure that traffic is flowing as much as it should. And so that's just basically what we have here, Mazi.
Well, last mile officials might make the traffic flow, but they're not going to let the water go into the gutters. Lagos residents have been complaining for a very long time about this situation. So the question is, what are they saying government's response is doing? Are they satisfied with what government is doing, or are they still grieving over, loss of time, loss of business, loss of commerce from yesterday? Most people didn't get back home.
Okay, so basically, I did mention about last month having to, of course, the primary duty is to direct traffic and all of that. But you see, let me tell you, the truth is, usually when there are rainy days like this, it's usually a very difficult time for last mile officials, because when there are bottlenecks on the roads caused by water clog and all of that, vehicles do not move faster. So that's when they bring in their A game to ensure that these vehicles begin to move faster. For most often than not, commuters are always jittery about some of the activities or the energy that last mile officials put into their job during rainy season like this. In fact, for sometimes you just see them probably doing nothing much. And without them, road users of vehicles do not obey traffic, for instance. So when we have traffic folks like the last mile on the roads, they intend to ensure that the traffic is not as bad as it could be when rain and fall. So the residents are asking that the Lagos government should begin to pay more attention to our last mile officials to do their job much better, because usually they feel that last mile officials don't really care. After all, vehicles don't really obey them when they give instructions. So right now they need last mile to be on their game, because this is when they need them the most in Lagos. Of course, they may not stop our traffic totally, but they can reduce it as much as possible. They are also saying that our drainage system, so much money has been pumped in the drainage system in Lagos, but they really can't see the result. We still have, residents, throwing this into our drainages, blocking and all of that. So they also want some measure of laws and policies that would checkmate some of these activities. Otherwise, we'll keep going round and round these issues, and it never ends there, Mazino.
Oh. Thank you very much, Mbadike. Mbadike, I had a friend who spent 9 hours in traffic yesterday. I also know that we have Kathleen here with us, Kathleen Ndomo, and she's got an experience from yesterday. Kathleen, thank you very much for joining us. Kathleen, if you tell us exactly what your experience was from yesterday.
Nightmarish experience. I left the office at about 3 p.m. and I got home at past midnight. That's over 7 hours of traffic. And sitting in a car for so long, starting to feel spasms and your blood pressure rising. I told a friend, it's not life. It's not the way that we want to live in a mega city like Lagos. So it was quite a nightmarish experience that reminded a lot of people of what happened in May when the roads were blocked on the island. And up till now, I think a lot of people, even me, are still suffering from PTSD.
Well, Kathleen, there's something else that I really wanted to talk about, and it's the fact that when we're trapped in traffic, people do not have convenience, or they don't have the ability to just simply express themselves when they have to go. I'm wondering exactly whether Lagos has taken this into consideration. With 9 hours in traffic, people had to resort to, well, open defecation, if you want to put it that way, urinating, eutrophication outside of their cars. How is this affecting Lagos when it comes to pollution, Kathleen, do you think?
The whole experience is an environmental disaster, if you ask me. While I was in traffic, I witnessed quite a few people trying to walk. It's a health and an environmental disaster. People are trying to walk to keep in shape, not to have blood clots and swollen legs. And then other people are trying to use the convenience. People are trying to turn around to find where they can, camp for a few hours and all of that. And the worst thing about this particular incident is that, like the reporter says, it happens all the time, every year in clusters of Lagos. This was the nightmare for yesterday was on the Lekki-Epe Expressway. And that road is over 10 years old. It's not been fixed and maintained for God knows how long. I remember telling a friend that after NSAS and the fact that toll gate fees are no longer collected, it brings to mind a worry that if they're not collecting toll gate fees anymore, then they might not want to maintain the road and give a probable excuse that there aren't any funds or resources for maintenance. The road has big, massive, holes and potholes, and that's an expressway. It's a dual carriage, three-lane highway on both sides that should be taking people not only within the city, but outside of the city, connects to Ekpe and other areas of Nigeria. So to think that people have to be in traffic for 9 hours, worry about their health, worry about defecating and urinating on the road, and worrisomely, the coastal road that you would have thought that when things like this happen, the agencies will say, hey, let's open up 33 kilometers and allow people to use alternatives so that there is some sort of succor, was not opened to commuters. So we really have to begin to think that the traffic and the flood issues in Lagos mega city would increasingly become a governance issue as we head to the 2027 elections.
Kathleen, it's a very interesting suggestion you made about the coastal road there, because it is they have gone pretty far. You can actually escape most of the traffic inside of the Lekki corridor if that was opened yesterday. But I wanted to know, Mbadike, Victor here, told us about the efforts of LASMA, at least from this morning. We could see plenty of them on the roads, and traffic is okay. But yesterday, I'm wondering whether you experienced any efforts by the Lagos State LASMA agency. Did they do anything to help the situation at all? Were they absent because it rained all through? And most people will tell you when it rains, they disappear. So you tell us first if you experienced any of their efforts, and then I'll come back to Mbadike to confirm if this actually happened.
So I headed out from Ikeja through the third mainland bridge and arriving, inward Victoria Island, there was a LASMA officer on the road the junction that heads towards Bayokuku, inward Ikoyi. So there was a lady there who was actually controlling the traffic and being very helpful and all that. But beyond that, inside Lekki and the Lekki-Epe Expressway, I didn't see any LASMA or other officials. However, interestingly enough, commuters took upon themselves to jump out of their cars and jump out of the shops and the houses that were around those areas to help, which was quite interesting. I was telling the person I was commuting with that it is nice to see Nigerians, come out to support others at a very difficult time like this. It must be also difficult for the agencies because you would think that, capacity might be an issue, and other issues that I think, we can unravel as journalists. But then again, it's important to note that we can be helpful to each other, and also to see that the agencies, though they have pockets of people around, can't feed every single area of the traffic-infested roads.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mbadike, you've just heard Kathleen there, and you've also heard other stories. Apparently, your LASMA guys are not trying as much as we would like them to. But Mbadike, let's take a look at the flooding itself. If we're talking about the traffic situation, I'm wondering if you are perhaps maybe going to be doing an investigation into the flooding situation in Lagos and our drainages. Just one answer, because I think this is a very interesting bit to look at as a reporter.
Oh, well, Marcelo, you must understand that flooding itself is not the major problem because flood happen everywhere in the world. Well, the major challenge for Nigerians and the Goshen basically is that, yeah, flood can happen, but can we have a moving traffic at least? I mean, imagine if you have dysentery when you're in your vehicle. Imagine what happens to you. So, I mean, when there's a stop in the flow of traffic, that is exactly where Nigerians are really, really angry about. And I'm pretty sure it's one concept we need to really look into. We've been looking into that for so many years, but we won't stop doing that. We won't stop, championing the cause. I mean, raising this awareness to the state government to begin to also pay continuous attention to some of these issues because it's not a smiling. It's not. You have what happening said. I can imagine what hundreds of persons as well went through in the hands of. This incident in Lagos yesterday.
All right, Mbadike, I guess for a city on the go, for Lagos, when you got to go, you got to go. Thank you very much, Kathleen Domo. Thank you very much, Mbadike Victor. Let's do a short break now, and 12 Report resumes after. And welcome back. It's still 12 Report here. My name is Mazino Appeal. Now, the collapse of the Dare Bridge in Kureken Sani local government area, that's in Yashana community of Kumbutu local government area, Kano State, has continued to elicit negative reactions from residents who claimed they stranded and also unable to carry out their daily activities. Speaking to News Central, crew in Kano, the community members claim their children are not able to go to school and their women are not able to access better medical attention located at the Kano city center. So, joining me now from the community is News Central's correspondent, Emmanuel Bakudu. Emmanuel, thank you very much for joining us for 12 Report. What is the mood of the people in Yanshana regarding this collapsed bridge?
Thank you so much. Here from Yanshana, here in Kumbutu local government, it's a feeling of anxiety. Everyone is anxious to see that the only pathway to the city center is fixed. So I speak to you, I will run into a pregnant woman who is on labor, trying to access a pathway to access medical care. It is really a cooling task. And with the youth of the community, and with Yakubu, who is the leader of the community, and as you can see, closer to me here, there is a community-led action here, trying to get a temporary, bridge. Meanwhile, the government has also awarded a contract. There's an excavator down there to fix the bridge. But the community members are saying that they need a temporary and an emergency measure. So Yakub is going to speak to us. I'll get it in. That's what I'm going to make. He's going to tell us the situation on the ground. Assalamu alaikum. Ɗaya daga cikin matakin ban gaskiya albarka wato Yanshana. To za ka gaya mana illolin da aka fuskanta kafin gaya mana matakin da gwamnati ta dauka. Wanda illolin aka fuskanta da ya sa gwamna ya don mataki ga mana illolin da aka fuskanta. To na farko dai magana ta Allah wannan gari na na Allah ya sami shi albarka. Na al'umma. Yawa. Farko dai muna da bukatan hanyar ruwa a baya kafin wannan gada nan. Tana bukatar gyara. To bayan na suna da ilima kuma na rashin wuta da sauransu ba kai tsawon shekara hudu ba mu da wuta a gari. To duk wannan abin da ake cikin ana kan gyaran gashi ana kan gyara mai kuke kira ga gwamnati ta yi akan wannan yanayin al'amarin da ya faru da ku akan wannan lalacewar gadan na kira da zamu gwamnati da rutsani suka ya ba game da irin yunkuri da kokari da aka yi mana akan wannan aiki na har aka fara kaddamar da shi. Na farko dai muna ne ka gajiya ga mafauka Allah ubangiji ya saka da alkhairi. Allah ya ja da nisan kwana, Allah ya kara ɗaukaka. Ba da yanayin yadda aka karfe mu. Na farko mai girma gwamna lokacin da wannan abin ya faru ya gani a social media. A yana kuma an sake shigar da shi lokacin baya. To ka nuna mana me ke faruwa nan, nuna mana dan kuɗin masa nuna mana me ke faruwa. Dan mutanen sakamakon sanin Allah mata 'yan makaranta iyayen ruwa abin baya bagan. Yanzu ne motoci ba su tafiya sai dai kafa ya ba su abi sai na kafa da mai musamman masu mai to wannan da ya tana tabbatar cewa an gyara wannan mata da yara su samu su wuce kira. Okay. So what I just trying to say summarily is the fact that the government has made an attempt to fix it, even though they also need it as an emergency measure. But for now, this is a temporary structure that is being done to cover the excesses of children not being able to go to school, women not being able to go to hospital, and then farmers not being able to access the city center. But for now, we are still talking to the committee members. We're still trying to gather facts to actually know what is the urgent measure, because this community is made up of over 1 million citizens. Over 1 million citizens. We have a lot of people down there who are, stuck. Cars cannot move. You can only walk on foot, on bike or motorbike. Yes.
Bagudu, thank you very much for bringing us details here. It's very interesting to see that the government work is not happening right now, but the community people are putting together a temporary bridge. Emmanuel Bagudu, thank you. We'll continue to come to you for more details on this instance. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the Speaker of the House of Representatives is set to inaugurate an ad hoc committee on the implementation and oversight of Nigeria's Naira-for-crude oil policy. The committee is expected to track the implementation of the policy and ensure that revenue from Nigeria's crude sales aligns with national economic priorities. So, joining us live now from the National Assembly is our correspondent, Edo Joseph. Edo, good to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us. Can you, or rather, can we know why this committee is important? What are the issues they intend to look at?
Okay, good afternoon, Mazino. For now, the committee has been inaugurated. As at when I came out, all members were seated and waiting for inauguration, but now they've been inaugurated. And this committee, as we understand that Nigeria's economy is heavily dependent on crude oil earnings, and considering also that the Naira-for-crude sale is one among several initiatives by governments to help reduce that foreign exchange pressure and strengthen the Naira. This committee now, which is being inaugurated by the House of Representatives, and an organ of government, an arm of government separate from the one that made this policy, we can say that it will help bring that transparency in the management and handling of oil revenue by the government. That's transparency and accountability which Nigerians have been yearning to see. And with this committee now being inaugurated by a separate arm of government, we hope that it's going to bring that transparency, because it's going to be scrutinizing the implementation of this policy. We understand that this policy is going to be implemented by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited. But while it implements that, this committee set up by the House of Representatives will track this implementation, as it will engage with key stakeholders and even oil marketers, even those in the financial sector, to ensure that this policy is implemented to the latter. And beyond that, this committee also, I am very sure it's going to look at some of those gaps while it conducts its work, right? While it's conducting its work, it's going to look at those gaps that are inherent in this, in the implementation, and also possibly make recommendations to the government on how best they should implement this policy so that it will align with the federal government's economic priority.
Well, Idong, thank you very much for that. But I know that you touched on some of this, the Naira-for-crude policy here. Can you give us a bit of history or maybe explanation exactly how it works and how exactly can it help with transparency and accountability?
Okay, the Naira-for-crude policy, for crude oil policy, is one that allows the Nigerian government to sell crude oil to local refineries in the country in Naira, which previously it sells in dollar as it sells to other countries. But now this policy allows the federal government to sell crude oil to local refineries to reduce that foreign exchange pressure, and also the Naira, to strengthen the Naira. We've had cases where complaints that the Naira, you have certain amounts of money and that does not amount to value for you. And so this policy, while they sell these crude to local refineries in Naira, it's in that way to help strengthen the Naira itself.
Okay. Idong Joseph, thank you very much for bringing us details about the Naira-for-crude policy. We'll be expecting more from you. Thank you indeed. On to more reports now. Suspended Kogi Central lawmaker Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan stormed the National Assembly in company of a large crowd of supporters after her office was unsealed by the management. Now, although her 6-month suspension ended in September, the return was anything but smooth. Several of her supporters were tear-gassed while attempting to access the premises. News Central's National Assembly correspondent Sagir Ibrahim witnessed the fiasco, and here he reports.
The mission is clear. These supporters are determined to accompany their lawmaker back into her office at the National Assembly complex. Chanting solidarity songs, they marched on until they approached the main gates, facing fierce resistance. Security operatives, having shut the gates after the crowd breached the first entry point, moved to stop them. After repeated attempts, the supporters forced their way through the entrance, but were met with heavy resistance and tear gas from the police.
It's unfortunate that a number of our supporters were tear gassed at the gates, and the gates were closed behind them. It's actually wrong because this is the People's Parliament. People should have unhindered access to the National Assembly.
Despite the setback, Natasha advanced into the Senate wing with some supporters who managed to withstand the clampdown. But access posed another challenge.
A senator has been suspended for 6 months. We are walking down in here, and you are seeing the way people are being manhandled just because they are wearing uniforms and they have the authority of the state.
That is what our law enforcement agents are about. It is about hampering on and victimizing lawful citizens who are harmless, while non-kidnappers and bandits are holding press conferences in Katsina.
What had seemed like an uphill battle eventually climaxed as the embattled lawmaker finally stepped into her office for the first time in 6 months, flanked by the few who successfully overcame the barricade.
From the unjust suspension to the recall, it's amazing what we had to survive. And I give God Almighty the glory and my deepest appreciation to the good people of Kogi Central, Kogi State, and Nigeria at large.
The adhesive from the seal is still quite sticky on the door. Well, this is the location, suite 2.05, the office of suspended lawmaker Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, of course, the destination of the multitudes of her supporters, including herself, who made an attempt to access the premises and also successfully entered this office. The question now on the minds of many is what plenary will look like on October 7 when it resumes after months of recess and upon the conclusion of her suspension. Will she be led back into the chambers? Well, only time will tell. In Abuja for News Central, Sagir Ibrahim.
Would have been a day to remember if it was in September, but October 7th, we wait to see what plenary will be like. More reports now in Ibadan. The first ever Olubadan coronation lecture is underway in honor of His Imperial Majesty Oba Rashidi Adewolu Ladoja, the 44th Olubadan of Ibadanland. The event has drawn distinguished traditional rulers, scholars, and dignitaries celebrating the monarch and the enduring cultural significance of the Olubadan stool.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the first ever Olubadan coronation lecturer in honor of His Imperial Majesty Oba Rashidi Adewolu Akamu Ladoja Arushaman Rutishe one in the Ibadan land or any coronation ceremony in Yoruba land and beyond. Professor Toyin Falola, as I told you, is now with me. Professor Toyin Falola from Odiaje, Ibadan Northeast Local Government, is the author and editor of nearly 200 books on Africa and the African diaspora. And the most...
Now, the chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Zach Adedeji, says that the federal government has made tremendous gains through its economic reforms. Adedeji, while speaking to State House correspondents in Abuja, also paid tribute to 4 colleagues who recently lost their lives in active service before presenting Nigeria's fiscal outlook. News Central's correspondent Bettina Nweli here reports.
According to the chairman of the FIRS, debt servicing as of May 2023 has consumed 97% of national revenue. He says that President Bola Tinubu's bold steps, comprised of the removal of fuel subsidy, ending unrestrained ways and means financing, and unifying the nation's According to the chairman of the FIRS, Debt servicing as of May 2023 has consumed 97% of national revenue. He says that President Bola Tinubu's bold steps, comprised of the removal of fuel subsidy, ending unrestrained ways and means financing, and unifying the nation's exchange rates, has helped stabilize the economy.
As at May 2023, and if you look at our debt to GDP, our revenue that we collect to debt payment is around 97% as it were then. And Mr. President took the bold decision that this cannot continue. I cannot continue to train driver or constructing the road when the only thing I have is P2.
He says that though the reforms are painful, they have begun yielding results. He also adds that government reserves can now cover 9 months of imports, tax to GDP risen to 13.5%, and the Federation account allocation has surged from 711 billion naira in May 2023 to 3.6 trillion naira in September 2025, a 411% increase.
If you look at oil, which is tax, you see the increase. But when you look at the total accretion to Federation as at May 2023 is 711 billion. That is what we made. As of September, which is last month, you see the total accretion is 3.6 trillion.
Adedeji clarifies the Naira's depreciating performance, saying that it is driven by demand and supply, emphasizing that borrowing remains a normal budgetary tool for long-term infrastructure and not current expenditure. He also confirms that collections from non-oil taxes have grown significantly, hitting 1 trillion naira in September, while reforms in tax laws and automation are improving compliance.
If you see the bar, you will see non-oil. In May, if you check, we have 150 billion from non-oil in May 2023.
The chairman concluded that Nigeria is transitioning from a fragile fiscal position to what he described as a Tesla mode economy by January 2026, with better foundations for job creation, education, and infrastructure. In Abuja, for News Central, Bettina Nwili.
Now, Edo State Governor Senator Monday Okpala is reaching beyond Nigeria's borders in search of fresh investments that he says will change lives back home. Now, on a visit to Scotland, he highlighted reforms in his first 10 months and assured potential investors that the state is now safe, transparent, and ready for business. News Central's Edo State correspondent Amenze Bazoaye here reports on that.
For years, many families in Edo have struggled with poor roads, insecurity, and dwindling job opportunities.
You need to come to Edo now.
But Governor Monday Okpala says things are beginning to change, and he is asking the world to take a second look at Edo. In Scotland, the governor seized the opportunity to sell Edo's prospects to foreign and local investors, pointing to agriculture, infrastructure, and security reforms as proof that the state is open for business.
One thing that comes to my mind, the money of Edo does not belong to me. That will not make me rich. The only thing I owe Edo people is to use the money for Edo people. It's not my duty to stay in the office. It's my duty to go and see for myself and correct the wrong. That's exactly what I'm doing.
The governor also drew a sharp contrast with the past, accusing the immediate former administration of wasting 8 years without meaningful growth.
I feel sad many a times when I hear some people saying Obaseki has done well. Probably he has done well for them. But to me, he was a disappointment to Edo State.
Governor Okpala praised President Bola Tinubu for what he called purposeful leadership, crediting federal policies for creating a more supportive environment for states like Edo to attract investment. The governor promised transparency, accountability, and quick returns, insisting his administration is serious about building investor confidence and accelerating growth at home. In Edo, For News Central, Ameze Bazwaye.
Members of the Abia State Harmonized Task Force have come under heavy criticism over alleged abuse of power. The task force is being accused by tricycle operators, otherwise known as keke riders, and residents of extortion and acting out of guidelines. News Central's crew in Abia State recently encountered the operators and their mode of operation in Umuahia, and our correspondent sent in this report.
It was a normal work day, and the News Central crew had just finished an interview by the Federal Medical Center in Umuahia, where it noticed an old man who was struggling to walk and also seemed confused as he could not remember where he was going, other than it was on the other side of the road. It was quite a task to help him to the other side as he requested because of traffic, but with the help of another gentleman who identified as an immigration officer, we were able to get him across beside a bank and flagged down a tricycle to convey him to Abia Specialist Hospital a few meters away. Unfortunately, the old man stayed in that ride for nearly an hour following the disruption by task force members. The keke operator's offense was picking a passenger at the wrong spot, despite the reason. However, the same task force is seen in parts of the road allowing certain tricycle drop and pick passengers at non-designated areas, leading to the accusation of complicity by the masses.
After the bus stop, I will park there and allow them to take it. Now I go. While when they're in a park, government secret. I went in the mail, I went in the mail, I went to go up to hello, Doctor and the hammer faces in down Nana, hello, Diana, main road, Anna, Diego, which is Roha, may or down hammer, a Chidegi, Brugge office.
Keke operators are also questioning the use of the bus stops that have been built by the government if vehicles cannot drop or pick passengers from there.
Again, brother, the one, my guardian worker like this, and if you can struggle, maybe not drop when you may be a boss. Before then, a vehicle accident, that's not the bus stop have to be approved from government.
Some have also called for proper training of the members of the Harmonized Task Force. In response to this situation, the Special Advisor to the Governor on Media and Publicity, Ferdinand Ekoma, says one of the duties of the task force is to ensure there are no obstructions on the road.
Because we don't expect anybody to walk, outside his or her brief. Okay, so if there is a bus stop, people must stop. That is why it is called a bus stop. People must stop there. People must speak and drop passengers there. You don't have any right to harass people in the name of not taking off, not commissioning. We are not interested in commissioning bus stops. We will not keep quiet where there are verified cases of extortion or harassment.
It is certain that the task force has been able to clear congestion on some busy areas within Abia and Umuahia, but the government still needs to check their activities, which often seem oppressive. In Umuahia for News Central, Chinwe Ugele.
Now coming up, Guinea provisional results show citizens support new constitution. We'll bring you the details after this break, only if you stay with us. Welcome back. Now in Malawi, President Lazarus Chakwera has conceded defeat in the just concluded presidential election, paving the way for a return to power by former President Peter Mutharika. Chakwera, who has led the country since 2020, acknowledged the outcome in a national address, saying he respects the will of Malawians and will ensure a smooth transition. With official tallies from the Malawi Electoral Commission showing Mutharika in the lead, Chakwera congratulated his predecessor and urged citizens to remain peaceful as the country prepares for the handover of power. The concession marks the end of a closely fought race that had narrowed to just two main contenders, Chakwera and Mutharika. Several other presidential hopefuls, including former President Joyce Banda, had earlier conceded, clearing the path for Mutharika's comeback.
Fellow Malawians, 2 nights ago, the Malawi Electoral Commission announced the validated results of the presidential election from 11 councils, bringing their total to 24. with only the results of 12 councils remaining. From those official results, it was clear that my main rival, His Excellency Professor Arthur Peter Mutharika of the Democratic Progressive Party, had already secured an insurmountable lead and is the presumptive winner of the presidential election. For this reason, a moment ago, I called Professor Mutharika directly to congratulate him on his historic victory and to wish him well in his upcoming tenure as the 7th President of the Republic of Malawi. I have done this because I accept the results of the presidential election.
Provisional results released by Guinea's Electoral Commission shows citizens have overwhelmingly backed a new constitution in a referendum. This comes 4 years after military seized power. The vote showed 89% support for the charter, marking a decisive step in the junta plan to reshape the country's political future. The new constitution is expected to pave the way for fresh elections while granting the ruling military leader the opportunity to contest the presidency. Authorities describe the process as a key milestone toward a civilian-led government, though critics warn it could entrench military dominance. International observers have urged transparency and inclusiveness as Guinea moves forward, stressing that democratic credibility will depend on how the transition is managed.
Je déclare que le projet de nouvelle constitution soumis à l'approbation du peuple par voie référendaire, avec un taux de participation de 86,42%, 5 135 951, soit.
Now, U.S. President Donald Trump has addressed the session at the ongoing United Nations General Assembly, where he lashed at the international organization, questioning its purpose and calling it a failure. He also criticized world leaders for recognizing Palestinian state and others for allowing migrants into their countries. He gave an outline of America's achievements under his administration. We'll be bringing you visuals from that event soon, but for more on this, I'm joined by senior international correspondent and anchor, Afia Hagen. Afia, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Tell us, what's been the reaction to Trump's speech since, because it was a fiery speech?
It was 56 minutes long, lots of sound bites from that speech. The one that's really prompted a strong reaction was talking about London's Mayor Sadiq Khan and saying that London was heading towards Sharia law, something that is just frankly not true. Now, a spokesperson for the mayor said, "We're not going to dignify this appalling and bigoted comments with a response. London is the greatest city in the world, safer than major US cities, and we're delighted to welcome the record number of US citizens moving here." Now, Sadiq Khan himself just a couple of minutes ago branded Donald Trump racist, sexist, misogynistic and Islamophobic. He went on to say that he was living rent-free in the president's head after he criticized the UK and the mayor yesterday. Now, the president said in his speech that Sadiq Khan was terrible and said, "I look at London where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor, and it's been changed. It's been so changed, and now they want to go to Sharia law," which, like I said, is not true.
Afia, let's take visuals from the moment we're speaking about now. Let's go to UNGA from yesterday and President Donald Trump's speech. Let's take a look.
Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, First Lady of the United States, distinguished delegates, ambassadors, and world leaders. 6 years have passed since I last stood in this grand hall and addressed a world that was prosperous and at peace in my first term. Since that day, the guns of war have shattered the peace I forged on 2 continents. An era of calm and stability gave way to one of the great crises of our time. And here in the United States, 4 years of weakness, lawlessness, and radicalism under the last administration delivered our nation into a repeated set of disasters. 1 year ago, our country was...
Yeah, there we heard it from President Trump. Unfortunately, Afia, I can't continue this conversation because we're out of time, but there were memorable moments from that one, and my best one was, your countries are all going to hell. But Afia, we'll talk more about this in subsequent bulletins. Let's let you go now. Now here's your postscript for today. Let's talk about mental health. 1 billion people, that's the World Health Organization's new estimate of how many are living with mental health conditions. 1 in every 8 of us. Now let's think about this for a minute. If this were a country, it would be the largest nation on earth, a nation built on invisible wounds. I'll tell you much about it now. Now think about it for everybody who perhaps, well, you see every single day. Picture it this way, a classroom where 2 out of 3 desks are filled by students battling anxiety, an office where at least 1 colleague is fighting depression, and this happens every single day, behind a forced smile or maybe a good greeting. A family dinner where someone you love is actually there in body but not in mind. And yet the silence is deafening. In 2021 alone, suicide claimed over 700,000 lives. That's nearly 2,000 people every single day. That's like wiping out an entire town daily, while the rest of the world, well, scrolls by, literally, on Instagram. Now, the cruel joke is this. We know the scale of the crisis. We've chatted the graphs, published the studies, issued the reports, but budgets for mental health remain an afterthought. Professionals are few, and stigma keeps the doors of treatment shut, especially here in Nigeria. It's like diagnosing a fire, but handing the firefighters teaspoons. Now, this isn't fringe anymore. Mental health is global health. Anxiety doesn't ask for your passport. Depression doesn't check your paycheck. Trauma, well, that doesn't stop at the borders. It crosses through. So here's where it matters for all of us. If we keep looking away, the cost will keep multiplying in schools, in workplaces, in homes. But if we face it with the urgency it deserves, we're not just fixing statistics, we're giving people a real chance to actually breathe again. So because at the end of the day, mental health is not just about them, it's about us. It's about me, and it's about you. And in a world of 8 billion people, the odds are clear. If it's not your story today, it may be your neighbor's tomorrow. It may be yours the next. And that's your postscript.